Hey there, what's going on? It's Mav. Today we're going to talk a little bit about creativity. We're going to talk about why it's important and how to tap into it a little bit more. I have definitely gone through phases of my life where I've not felt like I was a creative person. And I've said many times oh, I'm just not a creative person. Now that's not something that I say anymore because I know that fundamentally it's just not true. Um, but yeah, it is something that's super, super common. I think that it is really normal also for people to have creative blocks in their life and experience moments where they feel less connected to their creativity. But I don't really think that, when people say things like, I'm just not creative, I don't really think that's true. So far, I have not been proven wrong, but I'm open to it. But I think that people just are confused about what creativity is and how to access it, and that's why they feel like they're not creative. So I want to help you tap into your creativity a little bit more today. So I have 4 tips that I want to share with you. So the first tip that I have is that creativity is inherent, but skill is acquired. Creativity is something that every single person is born with. It's, like I said, inherent in our nature. I like to think about what things were like when we were kids. We tend to be much more connected to our sense of creativity. If you give us a blank piece of paper, we'll come up with something to put onto it. And we're less worried about it looking good. We're just putting our thoughts and ideas onto paper, right? And that's just with drawing or doodling or something like that. But we're also creative in the way that we play, and our imagination kind of is super wild while we're young. And I think that some of us have gotten kind of disconnected from that inherent sense of creativity. We didn't lose it, we just kind of have, like I said, gotten really disconnected from it. And then when it comes to skill, which I think that people who say oh, I'm not creative, they might mean they don't have artistic skill. Because I've heard people say things like the only natural talent that an artist has is the desire to create something, and everything else is just learned and developed over time. Someone who is out there creating beautiful portraits and creating amazing music or whatever, they probably were doing that for a little bit of time. I think we have some random exceptions of people who have a lot of natural skill and things like that. But the majority of folks, we have to learn things and acquire skill. So when you talk about your sense of creativity, just use accurate language. So if you mean I don't have a lot of skill in these areas, then say that. Don't say that you're not creative, because once again, I don't think that's accurate because everyone is creative inherently. The second point that I think will hopefully help open up some of your minds is that creativity isn't just about making art. It's not just about creating music or painting or poetry or things like that. There are tons of other ways that you can be creative, especially in our digital world, right? There are so many different ways that we can start to tap into our creativity. So I mentioned things like poetry, but even coming up with different ideas when you're writing a creative Facebook post or something that can be creativity. Other things like designing something, even if it's just making a cute little area in your room that feels homey, that's an act of creativity. And more abstract ones that we might not think about is things like creative problem solving. This could be useful for someone who is maybe really business focused or is in management or something like that. You might think well, my job doesn't require creativity because I'm doing this, business related thing. But there's tons of creativity that's involved in that. You have to always be coming up with new ideas, connecting with folks and talking about your ideas. You have complicated issues that come up in your business, and you have to come up with ways to creatively move past those barriers. I could go on for forever listing different ways that a person can be creative. But I think once we kind of break free of the idea that creativity means you're an artist or something like that, that might help you feel a little bit more connected to this concept. So basically, find what feels creative for you. take stock of what you do in your life every day, and you might find that you're a little bit more creative than you actually are giving yourself credit for. My next point is that creativity is super important because it acts like food for the soul. We obviously feed our bodies every day. We make sure that it gets enough nutrients and water and things like that, or we try to. And but what about like our souls? You know, like how do we nourish and fuel our souls, our kind of more energetic or spiritual side? There are tons of ways to do this, right? But I think one that's really significant is creativity and creating different things. I think that creation can feel very, very life-giving, and it can even like create like a sense of purpose or a sense of accomplishment within a person after they've made something important or something that feels significant to them. For me, when I create, it makes me feel really, really connected to kind of the universe around me, right? I feel a little bit almost like less alone when I'm making things. It's a weird feeling, but like this is going to be different for each person. So I would just encourage you to just try some different things out. Don't feel super like closed in and rigid and like you don't have room to try different things. Just practice different techniques and see what feels good to you. Yeah. And my last point is that creativity is inherently healing. I think that it can be a really restorative practice for some people. It can be like a really great stress reliever, especially if you're creative in the sense of like solving problems, because problems can cause a lot of stress. If you creatively come up with a solution, that can decrease your stress immediately, right? But also like engaging in other forms of creativity like dancing or writing, drawing, different things like that can feel really cathartic and can be almost like a release. I personally struggled for a while with like art and drawing because I really wanted to be able to communicate my emotions through art, but I didn't have like a specific way to do that. But through just some experimentation and just trying different techniques, I've been able to kind of like access my emotional side through my art. But I did put like a lot of resistance against myself in trying this out. So this is kind of why I'm suggesting let go a little bit of that judgment and kind of that like drive or need for perfection or creating something that like looks good. That's not really what you're doing here. You're just getting things out of your system. Another thing is that creation is super important because it's present focused, right? We're so often drawn to the future or to the past for different reasons, and oftentimes when our energy is pulled outside of us, we feel really drained emotionally. Sometimes this can lead to right, like depression or anxiety when it goes on for a really long time. But when we're creating, the only time that we're creating something is right now in this moment, right? If I am drawing, if I am writing, if I am talking to someone creatively or something like that, that's happening right now. I can't create in the future. I can't go to the past and then create then. I have to be here. So while we're creating stuff, we're engaged in the present moment. And when we're in the present moment, that is a super healing action. So try to see if you can keep yourself connected to the present as much as possible while you're creating. And I think you can really even enhance your experience. It's all kind of connected to that idea of mindfulness, right? You want to be super focused in on something that you're doing. I know as a neurodivergent person, I can get like hyper focused on something and like the rest of the world like disappears when I'm focused in on something. Like I could just sit and do things for hours and not even realize that things are happening around me. That's an example, but it doesn't look that intense for each person. But yeah, try to focus in on the present moment. And the other thing is that I think creativity really helps us connect to our intuition in general. We become more intuitive the more we're connected to that sense of flow. We all have these like polarizing aspects within us, like the yin and the yang, right? And I think yang is more organized and linear, problem solving oriented, and the yang or yin rather is much more, it's soft, darker energy, not like bad dark energy, but it's like, think of like a dark cave, like it's restorative almost, like If you're in the wild, right, during the day, there's lots of light, you're protected almost by that light, but at nighttime, there's things that are scary. So when you go into a darker cave, you're kind of protected in that sense. So that's what that reminds me of. But that energy is very creative, very like loosey-goosey and flowing. So when we connect more to that energy, I think that helps us connect to our intuitive side. So see if that fits for you. See if as you create, you're connected a little bit more to your intuitive self, and see how that goes. Thanks so much for sticking with me through the end. I do want to give you a reminder to join our Facebook group. I will leave a description, or I'll leave the link down in the description. This week we're focused in on survival mode and working on how to get out of survival mode. And if you're interested, check us out and see what we're all about. Okay, great. Thank you so much for sticking around. I will see you tomorrow. Peace and love. Bye.